talking with God about kings and kingdoms. This week, the keys to the kingdom, student driver. Come on in, let's check out 1 Kings chapter 9 and 10.
All the Bubbas of the world, we got one mission in mind.
Welcome to the Biblical Channel. Always glad somebody is showing up. We love to read the Word of God. We're convinced the Word of God actually gets us from the bullshit of life to the holy shit so that we can shoot the shit and sound like we're knowing our shit. As Christians, we want to sound like we know our shit. And the worst thing that can happen is when Christians get out there and start talking and they don't know what the heck they're talking about. You know what I'm saying? So, and the Bible's one of them weird documents. We know it's good, but we don't know how it's good. And that's what we're trying to do here at the Biblical Channel. We're just talking about how it's good. It's good. And there is no better goodness to a book than this goodness, because God put together a novel over the course of, a couple thousand years. And this novel has outsold every other novel in the history of mankind. And it always will, because it is fascinating. It's us who get dull and boring. We need to figure out how the Bible remains the most fascinating tale ever told. And it's the most fascinating tale ever told because it's true, not just true, but it's real. It's absolutely real. It fits humanity like a glove, both yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So that's why we're here. Anywho, 1 Kings chapter 9 and 10. That's where we are. The story so far, though, has been really all about the temple. So if we hearkened back to, chapter 6 and 7, we talked about the temple being built, and this is a house with a name. It is a house for the name of the Lord. It's not a proper house. It's not like God actually lives there. Solomon, understands this, and we should too. There is no such thing as a house where God actually lives. He occupies the heavens and the earth, and so what this temple is a place for his name. And that's going to be a place of teaching. That's going to be a place of people having a good time. And that's really what's going on. By the time we get to chapter 8, we see people having a really good time because it is the big ceremony. Solomon is the master of ceremonies over an 8-day party. And there is all kinds of throwing stuff on the altar and eating and being merry. And that's how chapter 8 ended. It was, this was a hell of a party, man. It was good. It was the good stuff. And it was the good stuff because they were celebrating what God puts together, man. Let no man separate. Anywho, those are the last two talks. Go back and check them out if you want to get more, if you missed them. So now we roll up to chapter 9. And today's talk is entitled Keys to the Kingdom, Student Driver, because at this moment, it's time to drive this kingdom, baby. Like, 7 years has gone by. It's time to drive. All the book work is done. All the homework is done. It's time to get in the driver's seat. Hey, Dad, it reminds me, this scene reminds me, because of course we're talking about the kingdom. Jesus talks about the keys to the kingdom. The keys to the kingdom, are kind of on our mind. If you were following what the Catholics been up to, our brothers and sisters in the Catholic side of things have been, pulling together, putting a little smoke together for a new pope. But the idea of the pope in our brother and sisters, mind and Catholicism is that Peter hands the keys to the kingdom to the next dude, to the next dude, to the next dude. And the next thing you know, we've got Leo the 14th. Well, man, if that's good, that's good. Anyhow, Leo the 14th's first homily knocked it out of the park. He says the world's biggest problem is they don't understand Jesus. Man of my own heart, man after God's own heart. Let's put it that way. Not my own heart, but anywho, I digress. Let's get back on track here. I'm thinking about the keys of the kingdom, though, because it is time for Solomon to drive the kingdom. And he's going to have to pass a driver's test. And there's going to be someone who shows up to evaluate him. And it's all good stuff. And I think of two great movie lines, one being Starsky and Hutch, where Starsky is forever, paranoid that his mom said that he couldn't handle the Gran Torino's power. And, so the movie, focuses on whether or not Starsky can handle the Gran Torino's power. That's just funny to me. If you haven't seen the movie Starsky and Hutch, it's old, man, but, it is so hilarious. Then the other thing that comes to my mind when it comes to keys is that old Cat Stevens song, the Cats in the Cradles. Is that his name, Cat Stevens? Yeah. No, that's not even him. I don't know. Who sings that song? Cats in the Cradle, though. That's what I'm talking about. And there's that famous line where, the son says, to his father, can I borrow the car keys? See you later. Can I have them, please? He says, can I borrow the car keys? And dad says, hey, let's sit down and talk for a while. And he's like, yeah, man, I ain't got the time for that. But hey, can I have them car keys? See you later. Can I have them, please? Anywho, that comes to my mind because the keys of the kingdom are on the line here. Solomon is going to, step out into the role of a student driver. He's going to take the kingdom for a test drive, and we're going to see how he does. And the first, one to scene, like a good father is God. So the scene opens up with God meeting up with Solomon now for the second time. And this does put Solomon in the category of what we call a prophet, because God did speak to him, and then he does speak God's words. He puts together words that are reflective of the words that God had given him. That's how the biblical inspiration works, is that faithful men do put together the story. And one of the greatest things about every character in the Bible is they put together the faithful story, even though it doesn't shed the best light on them. Every single character in the Bible has a story to tell, but it doesn't shed great light on them, and they don't hold back. They tell their own story with truth and to their own shame. That, my friends, sets the Bible apart from every other book. It's called humility, and it's called genuineness. The world could take a lesson from the Bible, always. So, anywho, God is having a lot of fun, though, putting this novel together, because the predictability of human stupidity is always around the corner. But let's dive into our text. The scene opens up with God coming in and having a talk with Solomon, because Solomon is going to be given the car keys to the kingdom. And so, we hear God, intervening with Solomon for the second time, and he says, I have heard your prayer and your plea, which you have made before me. I have consecrated this house that you have built by putting my name there forever. My eyes and my heart will be there for all time. And as for you, if you walk before me as your father walked, with integrity of heart and uprightness, doing according to all that I have commanded and keeping my statutes and my rules, then I will establish your royal throne over Israel forever. As I promised David your father, following me on to your children. But if you don't keep my commandments, and if you don't keep my statutes that I set before you, but you go off and serve other gods and worship them, then I am going to cut off Israel from the land that I have given them. The house that I have consecrated for my name, I will cast out of my sight, and Israel will become a proverb and a byword among the peoples. This house will become a heap of ruins. People passing by will be astonished and hiss. This is God talking. He's like, people walking by are going to hiss. I love that. They're going to hiss, and they're going to say, why has this happened? Because they abandoned the Lord their God, who brought them out of the land of Egypt. See, okay, so God has a good it's like a father-son movement, student driver stuff all the way. God has taught them how to drive the kingdom. He's given them all the rules, and there are rules. There are rules to be followed. You can't just make this stuff up as you want to go along. If you're going to have the keys to the kingdom, there are rules to follow. If you're going to be in love with God, if you're going to be God's son, if you're going to be the daughter of God, there are rules to follow. This is a house, man. This is a house with a name, and it's God's name. And it is our job to live up to God's name, because he is good. He's not just good. He is great. You get the picture here. There's nothing, really surprising in what God is saying. And he's telling Solomon, you've got the world at your disposal. As long as you keep this thing on the road, As long as you keep this thing between the lines, I'm going to be with you, and I will always bring blessing to this place. I will never be against you. However, if you go off-roading with my car, if you go off-roading with my kingdom, I'll take that sucker away from you in a second. I love it. Just good dad talk, you know? This section also reminds me, you know, that what basically God is saying is that he has the right to alter and abolish this kingdom. Ooh, does that sound like the Declaration of Independence's fourth ideal, the right to alter and abolish bad government? Well, listen, this is a government that is being set up. And if you don't think the founding fathers of this country took their cues from the Bible and from God himself, who has the right to alter and abolish bad government, well, then you ain't alive, man. You know, like Von Goth says, that if you ain't familiar with 3,000 years of history, or at least the last 300, well, then you are living hand to mouth. So God is telling Solomon and the people of Israel, everybody here is being told that God himself has the right to alter and abolish this temple. And he has the right to alter and abolish the people from the land if they don't keep it between the lines. Now flash forward to Jesus, right? Remember what got Jesus into so much trouble? Is all that temple talk when Jesus says, you know what? I'm going to, if you destroy this temple in 3 days, I'll build it back. He says, he said, I'm going to destroy this temple, and in 3 days, I'll build it back. And that just pissed everybody off to no end. And it cost him his life. It was kind of like the official moment, and then they mocked him for it. And nothing, is more interesting, right, than ignorant people mocking stuff they don't understand because they haven't taken the time to understand it. Is that not a description of our society today? Ignorant people with the microphone mocking stuff that they don't take the time to understand. Okay, well, God said, Solomon, here's the keys. Good, I'm good on you, bro. And, I'm all behind you, and I'm happy that you're driving my kingdom. Don't mess it up, or I'll take it all away. That's good dad talk. All right, well, let's move down the line here. And let's just check out what happened. So Solomon takes this thing out for a test drive. And the first scene that we have, well, borrow the pun. I love puns. I do. And I hope you do too. But anyhow, Hiram, the king of Tyre, has an interaction with Solomon as the king of, who is the student driver driving God's kingdom. And might I say, Hiram, the king of Tyre, gets the tires squealing for Solomon. In fact, Solomon is, we're wondering if he's going to keep this thing on the line. Here's what I mean. At the end of 20 years, after Solomon gets done building 2 houses, and blah, blah, blah. Solomon is a huge builder, by the way. The Masons are right about one thing. Solomon's a builder, and I don't know what else they're right on, but Solomon's a builder. And all that secret talk is all about Solomon's building. But he is a builder extraordinaire. But in 20 years' time, Hiram, the king of Tyre, who was his supply chain, who was also probably lending him a lot of money, now comes the time for let's just say it, the king to do what kings do, doing king shit. Solomon is doing king shit. Now it's time to pay some of the balance. It's time that, the notes are, coming due. Hiram is probably looking at him like, hey, listen, I love this relationship that we have, but you're not paying your bills. And so Solomon gives him these, cities in the north, 20 cities he gives to him. And Hiram's like, okay, let's go check them out up in Galilee. That's funny. Galilee will come into Jesus from Galilee as well, right? And Nazareth is from Galilee. Galilee's this crazy area up there, man. It's always causing trouble. Anyhow, these cities that Solomon gives are in Galilee, and Hiram gets the tires squealing. Hiram of Tyre gets the tires squealing. I'm sorry, I'll let it go now. But Hiram looks at these cities and he's like, I love this line. What kind of cities are these that you've given me, brother? Obviously, this is not. This is not good payment. Solomon is, well, I don't know, man. Is he keeping the peace? Is he, is he doing king shit for real? Well, he is, but the tires are squealing. This thing's about ready to come off the road because Hiram is saying, brother, you mean to tell me these crap cities in the north, probably up around where the tribe of Asher was, you mean these hillbilly towns are meant to be some sort of payment for everything that I've done to you? I have given you so much. And by the way, I've given you 120 dang talents of gold. Okay, so the tires are squealing here as the young king is, well, he's not young either, but, as the king, the student driver is taking the student, but hey, he is a king. He's got to, he's got to get his feet wet, and we'll have to see what happens. This isn't a big problem because it's not about faithfulness to God. But the tires are squealing. Will he be a good king is really, the question. Can he hold it on the road? Can he keep it between the lines? That is the question that comes up when Hiram is not happy. Now, what's going to end up happening through this chapter is that Hiram is going, it seems like Hiram says, forget about the cities, bro. I need help with my sea trade. And so Hiram and Solomon form a partnership around the sea trade. Is this a good thing? We're not really sure, but that seems to be, it seems like Hiram's never going to go away. The tires are probably always going to be squealing because of Hiram. That's what we get the feeling of. We're like, what's all this Hiram bit? Does Hiram love God, or is Hiram just like the business aspect of the kingdom of God? Another good question. Well, you'll have to judge for yourself. So in the part of the account of what's going to, unfold here is the account of the kingdom and the opulence of the kingdom that, Solomon is racking up. The gold, the amount of opulence is just quite astounding. And, there's a lot of what we might call boring reading here, but the point that the author is making is that the opulence is astounding. The gold on everything. This reminds you of, like Trump Tower on steroids, gold on everything, gold and quantities and storehouses and, planes, trains, and automobiles, lifestyle of the rich and famous, who's that guy, Robbins, Tony Robbins, that did that lifestyle of the rich and famous. So there's a lot of that going on here. And it is interesting, that this is not presented as a bad thing. Opulence and riches are not a bad thing from God's point of view. However, the question will be, can you handle them? Can you handle the power? Can you handle the power that comes along with opulence and wealth? These kind of things. Can you handle it? That is what's in the back of our mind. Also, there's a section that might drive our modern day ears, crazy and get people all in a snit and say, well, there it is. The Bible, endorses slavery, because there is this, pretty serious accounting of the fact that King Solomon used forced labor. And when push comes to shove, the, narrator is telling us that he did not use Israelites as slaves. So we were already told that he did use Israelites in forced labor. So there's this idea that there is a forced labor that is more like a draft, the army draft, where, you're part of the nation, you're part of what's going on, you're part of the building of these buildings. And so if you're part of the nation, then you've got to engage in the process here. And so the Israelites were engaged in the process, but the process is over. And we see that Solomon is no longer forced laboring the Israelites, and the narrator wants to make us aware of that. And we might be saying to ourselves, well, this is a problem because those poor, who are they? The Hittites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, the Jebusites, Amorites, those poor suckers, have been put under the yoke of slavery. So here's a little news flash for our modern day butthurt gang. We live in the most ridiculous of time because ignorant people run around talking about stuff that they have no historical perspective of. Number one, I used to teach 8th grade history. I'd ask the question every year and the answers were always the same. How many of you think that slavery is about white people and black people? You know how many hands went up in the room? Every one of them. Every one of them was convinced that the only people to ever enslave anybody was white people enslaving black people. That, my friends, is a lack of historical perspective. Every single ethnicity of people, every single color of skin of people have been enslaved. And the most brutal enslavements are when a country turns to its own people. So the worst enslavements that we've ever seen have been under the guise of, China's leadership and under the guise of Mongolian leadership and under the guise, of African leadership, where they enslave their own people. And that has happened in every culture as well. So even amongst Europeans, the word slave is actually for the Slavics. And I got news for you, ladies and gentlemen. The Slavics they're whiter than a piece of paper. The Slavs are whiter than a piece of paper. And that's what the Roman, the Romans enslaved the Slavs. And eventually the word Slav just became a nickname for a forced labor candidate. And that's where we get our name slave. Little history lesson for you. So the Bible, is being open and honest about the reality of man's idea, not God's idea, but man's idea of slavery. God's idea of slavery does not exist. God never intends on enslaving anybody, but he does say if slaves are going to be handled, you better handle them with care and diligence and human dignity. God does say that. You see, the Bible does step in to make sure that we treat everybody with the dignity that we deserve. These are the enemies of the people of Israel. Don't forget that. All those ites, they're the enemies. And enslaving the enemies, well, honest to God, everybody did it. No, you would not have found a single person in the ancient world who thought it was a moral dilemma to enslave your enemies. Try bringing that point up in public these days. Oh my goodness. Today, slavery is a bizarre understanding among the young people who don't like history, who don't like philosophy, and who are completely untethered from reality. And I have another, tethering to reality coming up here in just a moment. But for now, the author wants us to understand that Solomon is practicing life under the direction of God, that he is, handling things well. And there is definitely in fact, you can go back to the Torah and find God saying, absolutely never, ever buy a man. There's no such thing as that. Putting the enemy into forced labor, that's up to you. God doesn't tell us to do that. He doesn't tell anybody to do that. But he does say never, 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 never engage in man selling. Never. No other nation said that. No other nation had words like that. No other nation had an ethnicity like, or an ethical idea. This is just a very open and honest and very fair according to the custom of mankind's tradition at this time. And before I leave this soapbox, let me just tell you, do you know who solved the issue of slavery? Christians. Christians whose skin color happened to be pretty white. But there was some black people who were there in the fight as well. People like, Uncle Tom's a fictional character, but Frederick Douglass, these were the real, black champions who engaged in public discourse and who were respected by abolitionists who were Christian white people. Anywho, I hate using that term. Anywho, speaking of white people and black people, this is another great part about this scene. In comes chapter 10. Chapter 10, this black chick comes in. And the reason why I say she's black is because she's the queen of Sheba. Sheba is Ethiopia today. And I got news for you. People in Ethiopia have never been white. I'm not saying that white people can't go there, but the people in Ethiopia are as dark-skinned as dark-skinned people can be. They have the darkest skin on planet Earth. And so the Queen of Sheba is no white girl. And she is a black girl. And she is God's black girl. The Psalms love the Queen of Sheba. And she comes onto the site. And you know what she's going to do? She's going to come up here to Solomon. She's going to say, I'll see if what you're doing is right. I'll see if what you're doing is different than what anybody else is doing. I'll be the judge of you. The Queen of Sheba is coming up to Judge Solomon. Here's your student driver test, right? The Queen of Sheba, God's black girl judge, is on the scene. And she is emerging with the full entourage of the people of Sheba and what we might call Ethiopia today. And Ethiopia has always been a pretty serious Christian country. In fact, you find the first Christian convert outside of the Jews is an Ethiopian eunuch. Go read about it. Book of Acts, chapter 6, I think, or 8. I don't know. Anyhow, again, a world that is untethered from history and the Bible has the stupidest ideas. The Bible celebrates black people. The Queen of Sheba is a black girl, and the Bible celebrates women and Jesus himself. So the Psalms will pick up on the Queen of Sheba. So if you want to do a little dive study, on this, let me turn you over to Psalm 72. Psalm 72 refers to Sheba's coming on the scene, baby. Sheba, Queen of Sheba, she's great. The kings of Sheba are coming to the kingdom. So listen, the Bible is super high on the people of Sheba, the black people. Isaiah the prophet, has a word, a message for the people of Israel, reminding them that they got to be judged by the Queen of Sheba. And then the granddaddy of them all is all of the Gospels, all of the synoptic Gospels have Jesus telling the audience that you better mind your P's and Q's because the Queen of Sheba came to Solomon and judged Solomon with very little information. Not like you people. You people have a lot more information and you have a lot more in front of you, meaning he's talking about himself as the king. You have a better king because Jesus says one better than Solomon is right in front of your, faces. And the Queen of Sheba, she would, if I brought her up, Jesus is saying, she would judge you because the Queen of Sheba comes up to judge Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, a black girl, comes up to judge you too. That's what Jesus says. In the day of judgment, Queen of Sheba's coming up to judge you, just like she judged Solomon. And so this whole episode is fantastic about the Queen of Sheba coming up to judge Solomon, and she judges Solomon to be doing a very good job. So she's not butthurt about the slaves. Put that in your, thinking cap. The Queen of Sheba, black girl from Ethiopia, she's not butthurt about what Solomon is doing with the Amorites and the Hittites and the Shivite, all of that. Maybe we shouldn't be either. Maybe we should take our cue from the Queen of Sheba. Anyhow, I think so. I think that we ought to take our cue from the Queen of Sheba, from Uncle Tom, from all of the great characters, Frederick Douglass, that God has given us. But hey, for right now, the kingdom is being driven fairly well. You know why? Because the Queen of Sheba says so. So Solomon may have the tires squealing a little bit here and there, but the Queen of Sheba says, you're doing all right, boy. You're doing all right, boy. Yes, sir. You're doing all right. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. You're doing just fine. You love the Lord, and the Lord loves you. Blessed be the Lord your God. And then Jesus says, don't you dare forget about the Queen of Sheba. So don't you dare forget about the Queen of Sheba. All right, ladies and gentlemen, catch you next time.